Hello and welcome everybody to episode 72 of the First Circuit Podcast. Tonight's topics are the event and sale, the Rack MG hotfix and maintenance downtime, the public LRM session, Larshes Idea on locking systems for LRMs, Mech release for the Vulcan for C-Bills and the Incubus for MC, and the Rifleman IIC. I'm Old Bob, your host, and the other hosts are Biter,
Blarg,
Ian,
Hello, everyone.
Larsh,
Heyo.
the shoot and loot sale and event. Shoot and loot sale to begin with was really simple, just 50% off the Boar's Head, but now it's 50% off Enforcers, Gargoyles, Grasshoppers, Hellbringers, Ice Ferrets, Mistlinks, Panthers, and Zeus's. The biggest one I like here that I've been poking people about is getting the Skokomish, and we've had lots of fun with that mech. It is what it is. And that's about it for sales. The event is quite a varied one, I would say. There's lots and lots of bits and pieces to it. You know, getting UAV detection, shooting down UAVs, getting a headshot, I think, doing tag damage, countering ECM. It's all over the place, but it gives a lot of C-Bills and supply caches.
which is interesting though because they never actually gave out supply caches, and I found that really cool. Even though, I mean, they're really good for the new players like out there, but like when I get another clan flamer, I'm like, okay, this is cool, I guess.
Yeah. But Bob,
Yeah.
you have a chance to get an SRM2 of Artemis.
Oh, okay. When I get the SRM2 Artemis, I do a dance. I dance around my computer. That's when that's when big bucks like come in.
Didn't they do a buff to SRM2s? So now it's actually kind of useful?
Yes,
Did they?
Artemis on those.
Yeah.
I don't recall they did. I didn't recall they did that though.
Streaks.
Either
way.
Oh, that was the last patch. That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So with this event, I think, a lot of this you can do with everyday play. There's some that is just do energy weapons, missile weapons, ballistic weapons, easy peasy. The tag damage thing isn't requiring you to do, 50 tag damages, which was a lot of grinding. That's just one tag damage.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. The most awkward of this whole lot would probably be getting one headshot. But as we sort of have mentioned before stream, you could, the easiest way to probably do this is to jump in Solaris, take a dual heavy goose mech and try on your luck, or, dual 1-on-1 against a friend and take turns.
Yeah. Or, basically, like as some suggested, you go ahead and have two different accounts and two different computers and jump in. And most of the time, Solaris, at certain time periods or most of the time periods, there's no one there. Pick a division, maybe like 3 or 4, no one really goes into. Walk to yourself and shoot yourself in the head and do that vice versa. So there's other ways to do it. Unfortunately, though, that's not the quote, PC way to do it, but you can still do it that way too.
Yeah,
we do
for the
not,
most part,
we do not
it's
endorse exploits.
Yeah, we don't endorse that, but there's ways to get around this.
Yeah. The thing I'd say about this is it's not a bad event, and they give you plenty of time to do it. The most notable thing I think would just be the chicken dinner event challenge, because this one gives an ultra rare supply cache. The headshot one also gives the rare supply cache. So these are, as the names actually suggest, pretty rare. I have collected about 90 of these supply caches over my time. I haven't bothered opening them, so I can tell you roughly the distribution is 50 common supplies, 30 uncommon supplies, and then 7 rares and 1 ultra rare. So ultra rare is the big thing to get, and this one you just need enough match score, a victory, and 500 match score in one match. So that can be a bit tricky to get, but the reward is well worth it, at least compared to the other supply caches.
Yeah. Did you guys pick up any mechs like with the sale?
No, I didn't. But kind of like how Biter was saying is that so I think we actually just discussed this last time too on one of the past podcasts. Is that there was a sale that was about like 40-something% off, and we kind of predicted that there would be another sale where mechs will now be half off, which is happening right now. And you can actually get some pretty decent ones, like the I think the one which is our fan favorite for sure would be the Zeus Skokomish. which is on sale currently for 3,000 MC. I know personally, I'll say is that if you have not gotten this mech out there, get it. It's just a lot of fun because you're a giant assault mech going about the speed of a medium or even a slow light. But you're also getting a lot of the other heroes, like there's the Mislinks and the Mad Dog hero that's out there as well. So there's a pretty decent variety. There's also the Ghillie. I know there's a few fans out there. But one of the other things too I want to kind of point out there is that if you're a fan of bolt-ons, there are a lot of bolt-ons on sale that are now half off. So if you've been holding off on bolt-ons and you've been a little unsure about getting them because they're a little too pricey, now's a good time to go ahead and get those.
Well, that's one thing to mention, Larsh, though, is that all these bolt-ons is actually part of the Vulcan release, which we'll get to later, that the Vulcan is now available for C-bills, and all of its cosmetics, so any paint scheme for the Vulcan, any bolt-ons for the Vulcan are 50% off.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Good point.
Okay.
But this isn't... we've had other sales where it's like jetpacks are 50% off for all the mechs that can equip jetpacks, which is a lot more interesting. If you ever wanted a jetpack on a mech, that was the time to get it. Whereas this is, if you really wanted something on the Vulcan, now is the time to buy the Vulcans for it.
I should have picked up some of those jetpacks. I forgot to, actually. I'm kicking
Anyway,
myself because they're fun.
Back to the current sale.
Yeah.
I guess if you haven't gotten them yet, the Hellbringer is the classic laser vomit mech. The Mislinks is really fun, and personally, I like the Grasshopper for Innosphere laser vomit. Those are the ones I would pick up for steeples.
I actually picked up one of the gargoyles and two enforcers, the ones I didn't have, and just a gargoyle just to have it. And they were cheap, so might as well get them.
I think for the most part, and I kind of like the idea, is they typically put on sale the mechs that aren't so commonly seen on the battlefield. You don't see gargoyles all that often, for example, even enforcers, really. So by putting them on such a large discount a lot of the time, it tries to encourage people to play these less commonly played mechs. Though, yeah, the one big exception, the one that everyone knows is quite good in the game and has always been pretty good, is the Hellbringer.
Yeah, so I'd say this is a pretty solid sale. I know a lot of times I'm like, there's some okay items, but this is actually a decent sale if you're looking to get some quality mechs out of this thing.
We don't want to get too bogged up on the events and sale. We got plenty more to discuss for this week. So, anyone have any last thoughts?
Sale good.
Sale good.
Sale good.
Yeah.
Sale is good.
Yeah.
Good sale, good event. I like getting some loot boxes. That's a bit of a change. Though I always like MC.
So next up, we got some hot fixes, right?
Mm-hmm.
Hot
last week we did say that they fixed one exploit in the game, but the rack and machine gun hot fixes, the exploits that were found, were not fixed. And, well, now they are. So PGI got fairly quickly onto that as well.
Yeah, I think
You kind of Joshi.
yeah, basically watched the video on that, and he definitely explained you could get more rounds out or something like that.
Well, classically, this macro has been used if you boat AC2s, you could have it so that you have a ripple fire instead of all of them firing at once or using the in-game chain fire.
Yeah.
You have it so that it's just a constant stream of bullets, and that was approved by PGI. They said if you want to do the constant stream of bullets thing with a macro, you're free to do so. But when it comes to machine guns and racks, by rapidly tapping the button, you're able to get more bullets out quicker. And the bar would fill up slower, I think it was. So
yeah, exactly.
You would actually have a bit of an edge if you're using a macro with racks and machine guns. So this one's a bit more of an edgy territory because the thing was the ripple fire with AC2s is more for the visual effect and the sound effect, like the psychological effect you have on target. Because technically speaking, at least you're lowering your DPS, at least initially, compared to just firing all the shots at once and hitting the target, rather than firing one, then one, then one, then one, then one, then one, then one.
Yeah.
So glad to see that was patched up, but yeah.
You guys know what the hardware maintenance downtime was for? Because I actually don't know what that was about.
That was for the site, wasn't it? I think a portion of the site was down. I don't think it was a very big issue. But I think there was some site maintenance that was going this past week.
No, they gotta have the site on all the time. Damn it. So cool.
All
Yeah, yeah, hot fixes and next the big one.
Yeah. Feel like we're doing like a speed round here, but
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so
I know.
we're just bouncing off topics left and right today. So, who did the public test session with the LRMs? I know I didn't get a chance to get into it, but did anyone get a chance or watch any streams of people playing the PTS?
Well, just like last time, I tried to get into and wasn't able to find a match.
Really?
Gotcha.
Yes. I'm gonna try again today because the PTS is still going on until next week. But I'm not that optimistic.
Yeah, I don't know. I think because we actually explained this before that the PTS doesn't have a food pellet to give to people to go try it out, and I think that's why a lot of people aren't trying this out, to go help them out to figure out how to do LRM changes. And so you're gonna find a smaller population of people coming into that to go ahead and say, hey, you know, this is this, let's help you out like on this. And I think I know who actually does it. Like, is it Chris? And like Chris does these.
Mm-hmm.
I may have mentioned as well that the prospect of going into a mode like an alternate version of the game where everyone is using LRMs is probably as attractive to people.
Exactly.
That's true too. Yeah, but I think the idea of giving some sort of minor reward, because I think the last time, well, not the last time, but there was one time they gave out these cicada warhorn, and I was like, you know what, that's pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and try this out. I kind of wish they would just do something like that, even if it was just the same warhorn over and over again, and you couldn't buy it, and you could only get it by going into the PTS. I would do it.
It's like Chris was actually talking about how like he didn't have enough like information on Twitter to go ahead and go and have this done, and so he wanted to actually go and expand this, and this is what this is. But like we were talking about, like who wants to go into a LRM match? Everyone hates LRMs or being attacked by LRMs, and like, you know, let's get hit by LRMs. Let's sit there and go and get pissed off for like 30 minutes or so, or not even find a match. So I could understand why it's not being as popular. People should try it out though if you guys can. Just for simple fact is this is to fix LRMs, and one of the things that they were going to fix was to make individual lock on. So if line of sight lock on and the indirect fire lock on. So the indirect fire obviously is what they are now, but line of sight lock on has a shorter has a faster velocity from my understanding, and then also it has a shorter trajectory as well.
Yeah. So first I'll give my thoughts on just the PTS in general, which would be sort of like, I'm always quite doubtful about how useful this information will be, because it's always 4v4s where it's a bit like it's like a scouting match where you can bring assault mechs. I was like, how useful is that data even? And the people who go onto it are your most dedicated players, and you have to hope you actually get enough matches to get data. For the most part, though, even if there isn't that much useful data from a PTS, having it as a big piece of news on the front page really does get the word out. And it's a great way, I think, in some ways, if you're trying to balance the game, to get everyone to talk about the balance changes and even try out the balance changes that you have in mind. So even if I'm really doubtful that the PTS itself is that effective, the overall just, the increasing the dialogue with the developers and how, them seeing what people think about these balance changes, I think is a step up from, just having it suddenly introduced into the game out of nowhere.
And people get pissed off.
Yeah, and then also too, so I'm currently in the forums right now, and I'm going over the actual forum post where people can go in and discuss the PTS. I'll point out one post done by player or username called Hammer Master.
Okay.
Hamster, sorry. I swear I'm not dyslexic. Hammer Master, and he was.
What does Hammer Master have to say?
He has 3 lines. The first line is 4 pages, which was 4 pages on the forum. Second line is no one on in PTS. Third line, no matches in 2 hours. So there seems to be not a whole lot of discussion, even on the forums. So the forum post for discussion, and if you consider the amount of time of the PTS that has been out, there's only a total of 5 pages from the player base, and it's honestly like the same people over and over again in the forum. So it's not even like a large multitude or variety of people on this forum post. It's just kind of the same people discussing it. So so it'd be kind of nice to kind of get some word out and say, hey, like, go to the forum post. I know a lot of people don't go onto the forums, but go to the forums, discuss it with Chris, discuss it with other players. And people in the forums are actually pointing out that they're waiting in queue for about 2 hours or more, and there's just no one on the PTS.
Well, that's just it. It's one of the most hated weapon systems, and so you're not going to find a big group of people, wanting to go test these out. And like Biter said, 4 versus 4, so your data is going to be limited. And who wants to be sitting there and be hit by LRMs? I don't be sitting like doing that, but that's the reason why you need actually some type of food pellet to get them out there, like a LRM horn or something like that says missile lock or something. Just
a LRM horn would be great.
Well, the other angle is that not just, you're signing up to get LRM'd. That's if you're playing properly. Plenty will sign up if there's enough players, and they will just take a stealth mech or
and they'll just troll.
a brawler. Yeah, they'll just run straight into the faces of the LRM mechs and run them over.
Okay, so quick question again. When does the PTS end?
February 11th.
11th. Oh man, so Monday, which is the day the podcast comes out.
Yes.
Yeah, so the public test session, as I was saying, not as much interest even compared to last time when I was trying to comment on the forums. I was typing out my posts as quickly as possible, and then I found when I posted it, I'm on page 3. Whereas in this one, I take my sweet time writing things out, and I'm still on page 1.
Yeah.
Sadly, not so much interest in the PTS. The actual changes are interesting. So the first PTS was only changing. Predominantly, it was just changing the arc of fire. When you had direct line of sight, the LRMs take a different arc. This one is doing a whole slew of different other changes to try and make direct fire not just the arc, but a bunch of other factors more impactful. So when you have a direct line of sight, you get 20% faster lock-on time, and it doesn't matter as long as you can get a lock on the target, it will lock on at regular speed. If you're firing indirectly, though, the time it will take to lock will actually decrease the further they are away. So if your sensor range is only 800 meters and they're at 750 meters, it will take a lot longer than usual to lock onto the target. At least that's the impression I got. As well as that, if you're locking on indirectly, it will have increased spread, and that's for ATMs and LRMs. So they will splatter all over the place. They will take longer to lock onto, etc. etc. They did also do some changes to the weapons that complement LRM systems.
Tag and
Tag and narc, which means if someone is narked or tagged, you will not have the downsides associated with indirect fire, which does help reinforce somewhat these support weapon systems.
Yeah.
The problem I found is, whilst this is a nice idea, it only, with the tag and narc, it only really benefits LRM teams, where you take our 12-man with spotters and LRMers who are hiding behind a hill. You usually don't take tag to complement your LRM boats. You usually take tag if you're going solo queue to get your own target locks, in which case this bonus does nothing, because you're already using direct fire. Taking your own narc, it is nice to nullify indirect fire penalties. That is quite nice. The problem is narc has been nerfed into the ground. It is really hard to justify in solo queue as well. Whilst you do get that beacon onto the end of the target, it is very easily cancelled by ECM. So again, both of these weapon systems only really make sense for team playing games with 12-man teams.
And one giant issue I personally see with the narc changes, the narc only counters the missile spread of the indirect line of sight thing. So the lock-on, if you want a fast lock-on, you actually do need tag on the target. Narc alone will not give you the fast lock-on.
Yep.
So basically what you really need if you want to play LRMs, you need some kind of support mech that has tag on it.
Well, the thing is, it actually in this changes, it says weapon lock-on speed booster removed. Now, I personally, at least, always found tag didn't actually even speed up my lock-on speeds. It always felt like it was just a psychological thing. It at least always allowed you to consistently lock on to ECM at long range. But as it is right now, no, it doesn't actually, with the proposed changes, it will not increase your lock-on speed. The last parts of the PTS, Yeah.
It will for the indirect.
Hmm.
It will counter the range malus you're taking to the lock-on speed.
Oh yeah, it will help in that regard. It'll bring
That's
it
the
back
main
to
thing I
normal.
was talking about.
Yeah, okay.
Because that's gonna have a real big impact on the game if you're the 1,000 meter in one LRM to be able to lock on a couple seconds faster.
Well, that's if you're doing it indirect. Yeah.
Yes.
And that someone else is providing you the lock. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. They also did some changes to the missile health. Generally, they're making it so LRM, the smaller the launcher, the more HP the missiles have, where the larger the launcher, the less HP they have. So AMS will be more effective against, say, an LRM 20 and less effective on average against, 4 LRM 5s.
Which is interesting, and I kind of see why they're doing it, but from a logical, real life standpoint, I don't get it.
Yeah, the missiles are pretty much the same. You just have different size launchers. They don't have extra, hit points because they're bigger or stuff like that. They're all the same. They're the same type of missile.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't like the inconsistency in missile health. I don't like necessarily that still, even with the patch notes, the numbers are all hidden. So I have no clue how big these changes really are.
Yeah.
And in some ways...
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, lastly, in the past, we did have LRM5 metas where people would spam LRM5 chainfire. And that was really annoying, but quite effective because LRM5s were way better than taking bigger launches.
Yeah.
So they changed it so that the bigger launchers have much better heat efficiency. And so with the bigger launchers in particular, you're paying extra tonnage and slots for no real reason unless there's a benefit, which, it requires less missile slots and it provides better heat efficiency. If you do this, I'm just sort of in this awkward position now where before it was always just put on the biggest LRM launcher you can, whereas now you got this whole awkward, the smaller launchers have better HP, but they're a lot worse in all these other regards, but if I pay more tonnage, I have better heat efficiency. I don't like being pulled in two directions. You take the smaller launchers if you want tonnage efficiency.
Well, I think though that the reason why they're doing this is because literally with AMS, say the Nova S that we always run, for the AMS or 3 of them, it knocks out 5s and 10s no problem. And if you have 2 of them, you might as well just forget about it. And so this is kind of to counter that by having smaller launchers with more HP, because then the LM5s, because I really took out all my LM5s and all my mechs because they're pretty much useless if one person has AMS. And so this is to bypass that or actually have a viable reason to use a LRM5 like launcher.
Yeah, I think my issue is that I just don't like the inconsistency of the health of a missile between a smaller launcher as compared to a larger launcher. The only way, this is just me being a complete, stickler when it comes to this kind of thing, is that can you give us a canon reason in the lore of why does it have more health if it's a smaller launcher? I don't know. I just want to hear a reason of why in the lore that it would be more tough to kill a smaller launcher, because in my opinion they're all using the same missiles in their tubes, be it 5 or 20. Why does it have more health?
Did someone say lore? Hold on a second. Okay, so
Bob, do you have a reason for that?
Okay, there is no reason for that actually. Just like I said before, that the launchers themselves use the same type of missiles. Now, since Mechwarrior line does not have, say, Inferno missiles or any other type of missiles that are out there, I think there's 6 or 7 different types of missiles in the tabletop game. They don't have that, so there's no consistency or canon reason why this should be the LRM 5 has 10 hit points compared to LRM 21. Each one has 5 hit points. There's no reason why. There's no canon reason why.
Yeah.
And the only reason why they're doing this is, just like I said, they're making it so one AMS system can easily knock out a LRM 5, and they want to make it so that it's a viable weapon system, because everyone took out the LRM 5 launchers.
Yeah. How about this? Let's just say, sorry, this is me being dumb, but I'm sorry, and I do not apologize for this at all. But but a LRM 5 could be the same, not the same, but the LRM 5 missiles are fatter with more armor. So
that's going to be my answer.
All right, cool.
Okay. Here's my extended answer as to why the smaller launchers have more hitch points for the missiles.
Magic.
See, both of them, an LRM-5 and an LRM-20, are drawing from the same magazine. So if you imagine so an LRM-5, it only needs to slowly pick out 5 missiles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it can gently, slowly move them to the launcher. But with the LRM-20, it's trying to do the same, like 20 missiles in the same amount of time. It's just like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the missiles, they're being dragged out so quickly, metal's just scraped off them, and that's why the shell casing is a lot weaker on larger launchers.
So the LRM 5s are actually they're larger and have more armor, who sustain the launch from the actual pod through the other mech. So
the LRM 20s, they're more scraped. The armor's been scratched off.
What is this, Dark Age? Come on, guys. Come on.
We're trying to make a reason for the PTS so it functions properly, and I think we're onto something.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Anyway,
but just imagine
the same value, if only ATMs were buffed.
Imagine if PGI actually made the models of the LRM 5 missiles bigger, like physically bigger, to correspond to that reason.
And so all we need to do is play into the LRM-5 meta. You fire first 2 LRM-5s and then your LRM-20 behind it. So the larger, more heavily armored LRM-5s shield the LRM-20 behind it.
So basically a LRM-5 missile is maybe not the same size as one rack round. So all of a sudden a LRM-5 is just like,
oh, God.
This giant tapping on your cockpit.
I like this idea. You should do something like with SRM-2s, where if someone's spamming SRM-2s at you, it's like they're spamming mini suns at you.
Yeah. Okay. Anyway, but back onto the original topic. Where were we?
Someone kill me, please.
Okay, there's a whole bunch of weapon number changes taking place as well. So the velocity of all the LRMs have been increased up to 190. And there's a whole bunch of spread values for indirect and indirect fire. Also, clan LRMs on average are getting an increase to their heat. The reason being is because they are coming out as a stream, the heat impact of firing clan LRMs is a lot less than it is on IS, which comes out all at one go. Which does somewhat make sense, particularly since also the clan LRMs are so much lighter than IS LRMs.
Well, normally clan weapons always have been like heat mongers, basically. They always have better weapon damages and weapon ranges, so that makes sense. According to lore, basically.
Mm-hmm. So the clans are paying a lot less tonnage, but their spread is larger, and it comes out in a stream, and it will be hotter. That's at least all the downsides. And it being hotter is the new extra downside I think they're introducing, because before, were they... I think they were the same heat, weren't they? I forget. Yeah.
So that kind of goes hand in hand with clan. So when doing clan, you got hotter lasers and hotter missiles now. All right.
Mm-hmm.
It works out for me.
Yeah.
Makes some sense. Because even though you got wider spread in the stream, you're still doing lots of damage. It doesn't really matter if you're still hurting them a lot. I would say my feelings about this, the spread changes in particular, just like last PTS was, it's nice on paper, but for the most part, the spread is so bad it doesn't really matter. And trying to make LRMs viable by just improving their spread just brings them more in competition with direct fire weapons, which is not their role in the first place.
No.
All the missile weapons, at least for the most part, are spread like they have a fairly good damage per heat. They do quite a lot of damage for the tonnage you put in, but they do splatter damage typically, which means they soften the enemy rather than coring out the enemy. And I'm fine with that, actually. That you're doing a lot more damage in overall, but it's all over the place. And that's what you get when you're using missile weapons. Trying to make them much more spread and core out the enemy quickly, that's what direct weapons do. And if LRMs will only become quote-unquote viable when they're better at coring someone out than a direct fire weapon is. And that just doesn't that just makes the game a lot less interesting for me. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of things here. I think you go on forever about these changes. I do like the increase to velocity. I in some ways feel if you're using direct fire, if only then velocity is increased for LRMs. Like they just fly really quickly to the target. It would really help encourage the biggest change, which is the direct fire change. The arc. If you change the arc of fire, they feel like you have to spend a lot less time exposing to the enemy. And if you increase the velocity when using direct fire, the LRMs will feel even more, potent in that capacity.
Now, like I haven't actually used the PTS myself though, but if they turned out to be like MRMs, I'm not gonna be happy because some reasons like I might as well just take like MRMs for that.
In some regards, yeah, the LRMs themselves will be homing, so all the damage will hit the target. That is a big advantage, even though you're spending a lot more tonnage to get, like half the damage output compared to MRMs. The consistency of that damage is really potent, and of course, being able to fire indirectly, even with these spread increases, is a really nice feature that MRM just does not have available to it.
Yeah.
So in the end, I don't think a lot of these changes actually change that much. A big thing to note is the 20% faster lock-on speed when you got direct line of sight. That will really help all lock-on weapons. Most particularly, though, streaks and ATMs. The weapon systems are much better at direct fire. I think the biggest changes in this thing, honestly, is one, still the direct fire arc for LRMs, and two, faster lock-on times for ATMs and streaks. Makes them even more potent up close.
Okay.
Cool. All right, hey everyone. It's probably going to be super awkward because I'm sure it's going to be wedged in either in the middle or the end of the podcast, depending on where Bob is going to place it. But this is me, Lars, your casual mech warrior, Biter, and Ian, just coming in from the recent PTS of the LRM PTS. We just did some various testing for about 2 hours, and we had some things we found, and we wanted to go ahead and share for you on Monday morning. So I guess I'll just kind of go ahead and open it up real quick, and I'll start with the thing that I did kind of a little bit with everyone else here, is that we did a test with ATMs. So I guess the ATMs, the arc is still the same. From your average ATM shooty shoot from either line of sight or not line of sight. But probably the one thing we did encounter with ATMs, which is a huge thing, is that whenever you are in line of sight, those missiles are very clumped together now. Like, they're really tight. Is that what guys are saying, do you think? It's like a really tight clumpage of missiles now if you have a line of sight with ATMs?
ATMs are very often focused down one component. That's always sort of been a thing with them in the game.
It's the same spread as live right now, but during testing we saw it in effect, like really obviously. It's insanely tight.
Yeah, now I am going to be trying to hash together a video. It may come out before the podcast or after the podcast. I'm not too sure yet. We're going to see. So I did splice together some footage, and you will see that during the ATM test, even if Ian were to just twist his mech, I could just take off an arm and just focus the arm. It was that tight grouping of a cluster. Okay, and Biter, what did you find?
All right, so my little bit was to just cover at least the support tech. The tag, I think we'll leave to Ian since there's a big bug involving that one. For the most part, the NARC, the biggest problem is just still its low projectile velocity and its cooldown. The change they've implemented, oddly enough, counteracts the very nerf that they tried to do in the past, which was, the NARC is really powerful in group queue where everyone is, you make a LRM team and some guys go out spotting. With this when you got an LRM mech trying to do indirect fire at very long range, the longer time is quite noticeable. But giving this change to NARC actually does make it one of the more potent ways to get around long range LRMing. But still, I think LRMs are best used closer to the enemy where there's less travel time. And same for the NARCs.
I guess LMs in general. Personally, I think the change is amazing. I love the way they work in direct fire now. We tested with some of really high LRM mounts in the Crimson Strait tunnel, and even the mortar where the limbs were literally right under the ceiling was able to fire inside the tunnel
Yeah,
with
because
full effectiveness.
it was crazy. Yeah, because I was in that Mauler 1P with just 2 LRM 20s, and I was able to shoot them right at you very easily.
It was beautiful.
The arc will the direct arc will greatly encourage direct fire with LRMs, and indirect fire, particularly at extreme ranges, is quite disencouraged because of the greater lock-on times.
Ooh, yeah,
unless you're using NUC in that team of NUC, team doing LRMs.
That should be interesting. I didn't even think about that until just now. That may actually force player base to not hang at the edge of the map anymore if you're doing LRM.
Yeah. I mean, indirect, I think it's still fine. I think the way it's currently implemented in PTS is how it should work. It's fun enough. And if you got a reliable person in your team that can keep the log for him, it's still fine to do it. It's just going to be slightly more difficult, especially in solo queue. So I guess solo queue encourages short range LRMs now. All right. I guess then moving on to the last part, the tag. On its own, I would say the tag is on paper a lot better than NARC, since you're getting both the direct line of sight boost and you're getting the additional speed up boost from line of sight, which NARC doesn't have. However, using tag, we discovered something that's probably a major bug. Whenever you switch from direct line of sight to indirect line of sight, we've lost our target lock. So basically, you had a target lock when someone tagged him. The tag went off, you went to indirect line of sight, and you lost the lock for a split second and had to totally reacquire it. Especially at long ranges, that is obviously going to hurt you. We've also discovered in the part that NARC line of sight must be coded different from tag line of sight and direct line of sight. Since also when you switched from a tagged target over to a only NARCed target, you would still lose the lock. We think it's a bug. Who knows, maybe by Monday it's already fixed. Currently it totally breaks the game for a couple of reasons, most noticeably if the enemy team is being scribbled by a light mech with tag, and that person just randomly tags people around him. Every time a target you currently have in indirect lock is tagged, you're going to switch to direct line of sight, and when the tag goes off a couple split seconds later, you're going to lose the lock. And at that point, you might blind fire alarms, and, well, no one likes to waste ammo. So,
yeah,
major bug with tag right now. We're hoping it's going to be fixed soon.
Great way to quote unquote support your team by trolling. You just keep tapping them with the tag, giving the tag bonus and then losing the tag bonus, so that they just keep losing their locks over and over again.
So I think that pretty much sums up our findings. Again, this has been Larsh, Biter, and Ian with a special news bulletin.
We have something else for the PTS that was actually ingrained from Larsh. So I'll let you take it from here, Larsh.
Oh, sure. So one of the big, it's not really a big change, but after reading the notes of the PTS, and the biggest change, if for people who don't really read the numbers, is that lock-ons in range and everything else will change from direct to indirect. Now let's just say you were just your average player and you're really not paying a whole lot of attention, and then let's just say later on down the line a patch comes and this does happen. That this PTS comes to fruition and the overall changes happen in the real game. So one of those things that I was thinking, I posted it on Twitter and on the forums and a variety of other places too, is to try to think of a way to change the actual aiming reticle to basically give a real-time visual of when you're in a line of sight, or opposed to a indirect line of sight. So when the mech goes behind a hill. So I was trying to think of multiple ways to do it. Bob, I think I gave you some images that maybe you'll show on the video when this comes out. But I had gone through multiple ideas and then took some input from like Facebook and Reddit and actually the forum based on what people were saying. So to kind of go down the line, the first option I had is that when your enemy is in basically a behind a hill, so the mech will be in direct line of sight. I thought of just keeping that as just your standard red circle around that. But then when a mech would become in a direct line of sight, to tell you that it's now directly in sight, to change that circle from red to green. But I then got some feedback and said, well, that won't work well with the people who are colorblind, which makes sense. I kind of forgot that little tidbit. I've never designed a game and put that in my, basically in my mind of it. So I wanted to go ahead and think of other options to give a more visual reasoning on screen, because and also too, I'm doing this for two reasons actually. Is that the reason one is that whenever I'm in a firefight, I might not necessarily think about, oh, that mech is line of sight or indirect line of sight. So I want a visual reasoning in the game to tell me directly, so I can play a teeny bit smarter when it comes to getting a mech of line of sight as opposed to indirect line of sight. And two is that I have the utmost confidence of this game and how it's designed mostly, but I know we've tend to seeing things happen not work properly when something might go behind a wall that's invisible. So for a shot that might be line of sight might actually not be line of sight. So I'm thinking that this might help the player base. So later on, if this does come into the gameplay and a person shooting LRMs or ATMs, and all of a sudden they're like, "Hey, I thought that shot was going to be line of sight, but it's not." Well, to give it, so maybe to kind of prepare for that kind of argument is to say, give this reticle a visual change to tell you that yes, it's in sight or not in sight. So then my version 2 was to put a little arrow icon next to the actual sight. So one would have like a curved arrow above a flat line to tell you that things are in line of sight, or then to have a little triangle to say, hey, it is behind a mountain or behind an object, and you're now shooting over it. I thought that one was kind of nice, but then I got some feedback. I was saying, well, that might be too busy on the screen, and so maybe not have that. So then the third option was to actually just change that square icon on the aiming area. So let's just say you're following mech across the screen, and you have them locked with LRMs, and you're shooting at them, and they're in your mainly in your sight. So the square is the standard square icon you see now, and then when they go behind a mountain or a building, that square could then shift 45 degrees. So it's a very subtle change. So at that point, there's no color change, there's no adding of icons to the HUD, but it would just be a slight little rotation to the left to say, hey, it's now out of your sight, kind of thing. So I did put it on the forums. I've gotten some feedback from some players that are out there. I didn't hear anything back from Chris on it, but we'll see. Maybe, I don't know. Give it time. But I don't know how hard it would be to design a slight change in the aiming HUD to just say, hey, if this does come to be, it might help players understand when things are in sight or out of sight.
One question I would have is, in the UI already, there's the 6 colored blocks surrounding the center that are indicating the status of your various different weapon groups.
Mm-hmm.
For some reason, the top left, there's also this angled line thing for some reason. In some ways, you could use that feature that is already in the game instead of just the circle thing. I'm not sure, one example would be simply that with weapon groups, you're obviously going to have a weapon group for your LRMs, and you could have a different color or something on the block to indicate it's direct or indirect, like a line just diagonal or horizontal.
So looking at the first photo that we posted, kind of like there's those 6 orangish looking blocks next to the HUD, you mean?
Yeah, that's already in the game, and it doesn't add more visual clutter too much to it. The way it works is when the weapon is cycling, the block is red, and when it is available to shoot, it is just that regular yellow color. And all you need to do is add a line to it, horizontal diagonal, depending on whether it's indirect or direct fire. Uh,
Maybe, because at that point you're still adding a line, which is kind of like the second option I did. And at that point, it's kind of small, which was one other complaint I had from people is that
Yep.
when you add things like that, it becomes too small of a thing to notice.
Mm-hmm. So one thing I've never figured out is why there's that little right angle thing at the top left of the first block. What is it? Does it do
Oh,
anything?
I do see what you're talking about. That might just be visual. That might not mean, I don't know what that actually does. But something like that, even if you were just to, like let's say if you're on the second block down and that was like your LRM, and then you could put something like that to represent something that is line of sight or out of sight. But even then, but kind of like how I just said is that I've never really realized that was there. So even something like that is just it's so small of a change that I might not realize that I'm in sight or out of sight. That's why I said that I think the third option right now, where you just rotate that whole square by about 45 degrees, it's subtle enough and it's not giving you more clutter on that UI.
Yeah, one thing with implementation of this reticule, it isn't just the final reticule, but there's a little animation leading up to it. You want to know if whilst you're acquiring the lock, it's very important that you know it's a direct fire line of sight lock or an indirect one. With the reticule, what it does to start with is it's like, it's these two circles that are becoming smaller and smaller and they're spinning. It needs to be visually clear, that either it's the circles or like a square. And it might look kind of awkward if it's a square spinning around. It might be very visually distracting.
Yeah, so,
yeah.
Okay. I almost wonder if it would be like, if it was out of sight, have the circle be solid but larger, but then when you're in sight, it could like shrink down to say, okay, you're more of like you're more focused kind of thing almost,
Because we also want the UI to be, if you have too drastic a change of the reticule, there's an issue like you have something annoying, like a locust in Forest Colony running past a lot of trees, and they haven't got radar derp, and it just keeps going direct, indirect. If there's too big of a difference between the circles, the center of your screen looks like pandemonium.
True, very, very, very true. And that's why I was saying that, so maybe not even change the rotation, but kind of go back to the other option I had before, which is that little like arrow with a line, or like the arrow with the triangle. So you're not rotating things or shrinking things. It's just a little extra icon to say, hey, it's this and now this kind of.
One thing that might be handy, at least particularly when acquiring locks that we haven't necessarily covered, would be just audible. If you have a direct line of sight, the speed of your lock already has. Yeah, you can tell the difference audibly how quickly your lock is acquiring. If it's taking forever, it's kind of
yeah, true.
Oh yeah, I got it. Whereas if you're really close to an assault mech, you just press the button, done. Yeah, there's audible levels you could do as well, but I think that would require a separate file in the game, and it to play when it's using direct fire and that kind of such.
Yeah, and I don't know how sound cues are programmed into this game, so I don't know. So it's also it's one thing too, where this is completely just a visual option. I don't know how hard it would be to implement the change along, like you said, get that animation to be programmed too. So this could be all for naught, but I think it's an option I'm just kind of putting out there, and if it's possible, I think it'd be helpful. We just need to, and I do like the idea of a audio cue as well, if they can't do like a visual.
Yeah, I think this is your proposed change of like the reticule could really be easy enough for the community to implement itself, but I would say this is something that PGI is probably the best suited to handle, and just even if there's at least if there's something you can point someone towards to let them figure out it's direct or indirect, it's better than nothing, which is sort of currently what we've got right now.
Yeah,
what
and that's
you
what I'm
have on
saying.
the PTS launches. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm assuming that because they are changing the arcs of the missiles for line of sight or not line of sight, that they already have that factor in. So it tells the missiles to arc a certain way. So I was thinking, is there a way to link that data to a HUD item as well?
I'm sure there is.
This-
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really tricky one because the Mechwarrior Online UI has always been rather cluttered. And
Yeah, it is.
as I mentioned, the blocks on the reticule, I think a lot of people didn't even know about that.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because the blocks I knew about, but that little line, I didn't know about that little line on the very first block. I have no idea what that means. So yeah, so I'm always open to ideas, and then on the forums, we've had some discussion on it, but who knows? It's a complete option. Maybe if it gets traction, they might think about it, but the traction has been, I want to say, middle ground so far.
So okay, next I think we got the Vulcan and the mech I don't like, the Incubus.
Yay! The two mechs we numbered as our favorite ones from this year, right?
Well, the Vulcan, I'm not, it's much better than the Incubus, at least I think. Like, I actually like the Vulcan, just the Incubus, I just had horrible experiences with. It really wasn't my mech to use.
I guess we don't really care about the Incubus for MC yet. For the Vulcan,
Yep.
is there anyone you would recommend people to pick up if they really want one?
I think it was the 5T, that was a good one. It had the ballistic things on it.
So, I mean, to give a brief, quick overview of the Vulcan, I would say it's got really good acceleration, deceleration stats. It's got some kind of interesting flamer and MG quirks to it, but otherwise it is rather unremarkable. And its hard points, when it's only just a couple of energy and a couple of ballistic, is very underwhelming. It's very hard to make a very good build or fit enough ballistics under the hood. You're not really wanting to use this. Usually you're not really wanting to use it for 2 or 3 MGs. It's just not worth your time. And it's a 40-tonner trying to fit a big ballistic under the hood. For the most part, therefore, the Vulcan Hero, the one with 3 missile hard points, is somewhat the most approachable Vulcan, because you can, well, it's 1 in the head as well, but 4 missile hard points means it can actually do something. The next best, I would say, perhaps the I'm most interested in is the 5S, because that one has Mask with some UX quirks and such. So it can be made, you've got a really zippy mech turned into an even zippier mech. Like it takes that really good agility of the Vulcan and hypercharges it. It's still a Vulcan, and it's still kind of a big squishy target with really bad hard points, but it's really zippy.
Really zippy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you guys can pick up a couple Vulcans, they're actually not too bad, at least I think. But the Incubus, I would definitely wait for C-bills later on.
As we mentioned earlier with the sales and whatnot, because it came out for C-bills, like with any of the mechs nowadays, the camo paint schemes and bolt-ons are 50% off. It's a nice time to pick up a Vulcan and paint it up and put on bolt-ons if you really want to put bolt-ons on this poor mech.
And play Mech Barbie.
All right, and shall we go on to the Mech release, the new Mech pack?
Yeah, the Rifleman IIC. Everyone's been actually making memes of the hat, of the head, basically, of a sombrero, I think it is. Kind of interesting. Basically, the Rifleman IIC in lore, they're more the second line units given to either the free births or the guys who couldn't cut it into the main troops. And so the 2Cs were adaptations of the mechs they brought with them when the Star League left and went to the Pentagon Worlds. They had the Rifleman, they had the Warhammer, they had the Locust, they had all the 2C mechs that are out there, the most iconic ones. And then they designed them with clan technology, and these are the 2Cs. That's what they call it, the 2Cs. That's where kind of like where these came from. Yeah.
Whilst the sombrero does look kind of funky, it is because it's an anti-aircraft mech, and that's like I think supposed to be like a big radar dish, which it looks wonky, but I do like the idea of a mech actually having a big radar dish. I don't think though necessarily that it will actually turn into any real in-game benefits. Though if you gave me extra 25-meter sensor range for each rifleman, I'd say, yeah, Okay.
That'd be interesting, though.
That's nice.
That'd be cool if they did that, though.
Just a little lore or flavor for its visual design. I'd like that. Now, as for it being an actual mech, do you guys want to give your impressions?
Well, like all riflemen, they have all the weapons and the arms except for the paywall, which has the Rifleman 2CA and the 2C Hero Mech. So those are all behind like the paywalls. Now, obviously, some like the first one, like the normal 2C, has one energy in the head, which is kind of cool. But all of them have all the weapons and the arms. But that's not too bad though. Like I've been playing a lot of riflemen's, and as long as you're careful and don't charge up and be frontline mech and just be second line mech, just shooting from afar, they should be okay. But generally, though, I don't like mechs that have all the weapons and arms, because once those go, you're just a stick, and there's nothing else you can do in the match versus 12 versus 12.
Yeah. Like my general impression is also, I mean, it's a second line support mech, and that's how you're gonna play this one. It doesn't look too impressive on paper to me. I personally won't be buying it, simply because I'm not a huge fan of clan and support tech in that combination.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this mech has a lot of stiff competition, I'd say. The 65-tonner category already has the Hellbringer and Ebon Jag, which, for the most part, have fairly good peaking profiles in their torso hardpoints. They might be Omni mechs, but you have the Ebon Jag for its Endo and Pharaoh, and you have the Hellbringer with lots of slots and ECM, which is quite a hard thing for the Rifleman to catch up on. And the Rifleman as well only has a max engine of 235, which is the same as what you can put in a Blackjack. So its top speed is only that of an assault mech, like 58 kph or something like that. It's going Atlas speeds, and that's with max engine. Yeah. In some ways, though, it is just it is a support mech, and the best place for this mech to sit is next to the assault mechs. And if you're going assault mech speed, you're actually in the right place with this mech. Though it is a pity, 235 is not a great engine size. Like if you had a 250, you get an extra 10 kph or whatever, and you actually don't have to have the external double heatsink, which particularly for the variants like the energy one does just ever so slightly limit its ability to vote double heatsinks.
Well, yeah, one thing about the 2Cs compared to the Riflemen's, you're looking at clan technology too. So when you put in the XL engines, you won't actually get knocked out if a torso gets blown off. And then also too, the clan double heatsinks have 2 spaces instead of normal Inner has 3. So this is a huge advantage over the normal Riflemen's, just using clan technology. So if you're a Rifleman fanatic and love the Rifleman, you probably want to pick this. You probably want to pick this up just for the simple fact is it utilizes a lot of clan tech over Inner tech to be much better.
Well, I think it's an interesting case because obviously the 2 tech bases are very different.
Yeah.
The clan ballistics I usually am not as much a fan of as Inner ballistics. With an Inner Rifleman, you can throw on 2 Rack 2s or 2 Rack 5s and call it a day, or even just 2 LB10s or 2 AC10s are pretty neat. Whereas Clan Dakar, the UACs or the regular ACs, they do a stream of bullets. They're still a lot smaller and whatnot, but it's a much more different. Clan tech is just so different. But yeah, I agree with you, Bob, on the most part that this is mostly going to play like a Rifleman, a slower Rifleman. You have in your standard pack the completely energy variant, which is energy in the arms and 1 in the head. There's the 3 ballistic in each arm variant. I guess you could try and shove 6 AC2s in there. And then the standard pack only rounds off with 2 ballistic in each arm and 1 energy in each arm. But it's only really the heroes and reinforcements that bring energy side torsos and missiles and ballistic, like a whole mix of stuff together, which for me is like it rounds off the package. So you have to buy the whole pack to round off the Rifleman options.
Well, also too, the major advantage is this actually has jump jets. All these clan Riflemen have jump jets, so that's a major thing that might actually decide Inner Sphere Rifleman or Rifleman 2C. It's like I would probably just go like Rifleman 2C for the major advantages that it does have.
Interestingly, in the reinforcement pack, the big winner is somewhat the Rifleman IIC. This has 4 energy hard points and 2 ballistic. It's the best one suited to Gorse energy weapons.
Yeah.
4 medium lasers, 2 Gorse rifles, something like that. And that one is the only one that can't take jump jets. But it does make up for it because it can take a 315 engine max. So you could shove an XL 300 in there and go to and actually a decent pace. So I think that one is a big winner of the set. Not to say that energy boating or ballistic boating on clans is a bad idea. It's actually a pretty good idea. It's just you're often stuck behind a very slow engine speed.
Yeah. Well,
Still, it is a rifleman. Its arms are fairly good shields from the sides. It's just a problem that most of your weapons are there. It only has upper arm actuators, which means you have plenty of space to work with this battle mech. I think this thing it will just play like an inner sphere rifleman. It has quite a bit of potential. It has a good peaking profile. It'll be able to put lots of weapons up high and put out some good damage. The big question though is, of course, whilst it's a battle mech and you're able to fiddle around a lot more with the builds, it has some really stiff competition with the Hellbringer and the Ebon Jag out there.
Oh yeah.
So, and those have a lot more options in terms of they can have omnipods. They can switch out their hard points to do a lot of the things that the Blackjack is trying, that this rifleman is trying to do. So it's interesting. I think there's quite a bit of potential for this, but there's also quite a lot of overlap with the other mechs that are already in the game.
Well, that's normal, basically. As far as like when you actually bring a tabletop game to what it is now, you're gonna have overlap. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a matter of like, what do you feel good piloting? There's a lot of mechs that like it's much better than what I'm piloting now, but I like piloting a mech or that specific mech. So it all depends what you want to pilot and how you're feeling. I want to pilot the Spider, but the Spider's not as good as XYZ mech. But you just want to go pilot, just have some fun with it. So it just all depends what you want to do with it. But overall, just like I've been hammering in, this Rifleman IIC is much better than normal Rifleman. But we have to see the quirks and see how they're looking, and if it actually gives extra meters, like with that big radar dish on top of his head. So it just all depends.
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see how it actually looks in game. The thing with the Inner Sphere Rifleman, you could still, even if it's trying to shield with its arms, it often exposes its waist. You can shoot below the arms and shoot it in its waist. That's still going to be a problem with this one. It's just you can shoot below its waist and you can shoot the top of its head. And when it's trying to engage in targets on the front, it will have that big radar dish on the top, which will improve, drastically increase its size in a one-on-one duel. Whereas the Inner Sphere Rifleman, it has a fairly low profile mass that it pokes over a hill. You've only sort of got the cockpit and the stuff going out to the sides to the gun arms, whereas this thing has a very obvious hat that it leads every time it has to poke over the hill every time it wants to engage.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely. Just like we said, like we'll see. And if you do pre-order, you do get a bunch of things. So definitely, guys, if you guys can pre-order, definitely. The standard pack is obviously pretty good. Has the standard, basically energy, ballistic, and then mix for the 2C, 2, and 3, and then $15 for the 4 and A, and then another $15 for the hero mech. So you guys can definitely pick them up. Much better than Rifleman, at least I think. But of course, I have to see what the quirks are first.
Well, I think both are stuck in the same role. The Rifleman and the Rifleman IIC of being fire support mechs, and they can do great work as long as nobody shoots back. And that will always be the case, I think, for both of them. Clan, on average, though, at least will have longer ranges, so it's able to support. Its slower engine size is a detriment. It's harder to reposition with this thing. So you're a lot more glued to your assaults and providing them fire support with this mech on average than your regular Inner Sphere Rifleman. The regular Inner Sphere Rifleman can it has a small engine cap as well, but it can still go 70 kph and attack from odd angles.
Definitely.
Yeah. So my recommendation would be slightly different than Bob. I would say if we really like the Inner Sphere Rifleman, or if you like the Clan Warhawk, then you should pick up the standard pack.
Now, why
Otherwise,
did you
if you're
mention? Yeah,
why I mentioned the Warhawk?
yeah.
Because the original Rifleman IIC really reminds me of the Warhawk. Speed, it's slower, but its weapon loader is going to be similar. You're going to be able to do like quad large pulse is what it comes with, which means you should be able to do quad PPC as well, only on a better peaking profile than the Warhawk. So I think it's a very similar role.
Yeah, I had a very different mind with the that variant because I was looking at it. It's like, you know, I always like times when I was thinking of supernovas where I just put in a standard engine and fill it with double heat sinks, or I put in an XL and fill it with singles.
I mean, you could still do it, but I think the Supernova does that a lot better.
Well, it's a bigger mech naturally, but the thing is, particularly with double heat sinks, you don't need all that tonnage for all that space. Like I have actually thrown together a build. It has like 31 double heat sinks. It has 7 medium lasers, and every slot is filled with double heat sinks and weapons, and that's it. Like I think there's a little bit in the arms for a probe and a T-comp, but other than that, it has incredibly good, dissipation, just as good as what you can get in a supernova, more or less, with about the same weapon loadout. So. I actually, for the first variant, I was looking at that as like a supernova.
Interesting.
And the Rifleman 2, I'm thinking like, okay, I haven't figured out the math on this yet, but I really want to do 6 AC2s. I do that on the Night Gear, but now I can do it on this thing and just dakka my way to victory. And even the Hero as well. Like I want to do something like 2 AC2s, a couple of ATMs or streaks, and a few medium lasers or something. Like, this mech it's got a lot of fun things you can do.
There's a lot of potential. I think with the Rifleman, though, it's kind of generally only ballistic and energy builds. And this one, you're just kind of like, wow, I could put missiles here and do this and do this. There's a lot more variety you can do with this type of mech than you can with the normal like Rifleman.
Yeah, and speaking of missiles, the main reason I'm skipping this one is because the big mech I'm interested in is indeed the one with missiles, because I really like the idea of large laser ATM combos. So that's the one I'm going to get for Seabuilds in a couple months.
I guess for me, it's just that I like the Rifleman already, and I'm the biggest fan of clan tech, but at least this is clan tech that is, it's based on a good original design. It's almost Innisphere. It just needs to ditch the clan tech.
Well, clans did take the Innisphere idea, so I guess Innisphere is better. They're copying us. Haha. So, everyone, that was episode 72 of the First Circuit podcast with Old Bob and Biter.
Blarg.
And Ian.
Bye-bye.
And Lars is not here. He had to go do something. So we welcome all your comments, welcome everything you guys do, and thank you for watching the First Circuit podcast, and we will see you online.
And this is Lars signing out. Goodbye.